Even goes to 1080, not just 720.
Nice.
All right.
And we're live on Twitch.
All right. We're almost live on Facebook. Let's see. Just put in the headers and launch it. Take a minute. I'll let you know when we're live. Almost. Almost there. Get ready to paste the headers into the thing. Okay. You guys ready?
Yep.
Oh, first thing we're going to do is after I say hi to everybody, but not go all the way around, I have Sun. Welcome, Sun, back and then have her tell us the funny story that she wants to tell about her journey back to the internet, her quest.
No, frustrating as shit.
All right. And you might as well be live because we're with the delay, but we're live. So, hello, everyone. We're Super Geeks Live. Yay. And how's everybody doing tonight? We're welcoming back someone that hasn't been here in a couple of weeks because of a little story she wants to tell, and that would be Sun Sale. How you doing, Sun?
Hi, everybody. Forgive my voice. I'm currently fighting a sore throat and hacking up all kinds of crud. But you don't want to know that. You want to know where the hell I've been for the past 3 weeks.
Yeah, tell us your interesting story you promised would be interesting. What happened?
Oh, okay. So earlier this month, around the 3rd, I completely lose my internet. Everything. I wind up checking all the wires, the connections inside and outside of the house. Nothing works.
Uh-huh.
I call the service technicians out there for my service, and they tell me, well, we've got a shut-off order because you're past due on your payments, because I've been having some troubles recently. And I was like, okay, well, later this month we'll have the money to pay it off and get it reconnected. And this week rolls around and I get a bill from the phone company for the next
because you're DSL, so it's phone.
For the next month of service. Okay, if it's shut off, why are they still charging me for service?
Because you only use the phone landline for the DSL, right? For your internet?
Right, exactly.
I've been there, so I understand what you're saying. And
so what I do is I call up the phone company, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what the hell's going on, but I just got a bill after calling the technician a couple of weeks ago and them saying I've been disconnected. And now I've got a bill for continuing service, and I still have no internet I've had no internet for the past 3 weeks. So they send out a technician today exactly. And he was here this morning. Dude fixed my problem before he even came to my door to knock on it.
What was the problem?
Knocked on the door and he said, okay, well, let me explain something. Okay, outside of the orders we get from y'all because of technician troubles, we get orders from the company itself to go out to the boxes, the big boxes on the side of the road, and switch ports occasionally for the DSL customers.
Oh, okay.
And when we switch ports at those main boxes, we're supposed to make sure that the connection goes all the way through. And apparently, the person who switched my port on the 3rd of this month didn't sit there and wait to make sure the connection was through. They just switched the port. So apparently I've not had internet because someone screwed up at the box.
I hope you demanded a credit of some kind.
Yes, that's what I have to call them Monday for.
All right, good. Yeah.
Good, yeah, make sure, because they should credit you for that whole time.
Yep, give you an extra month free or something. Usually that's, because you paid for something you weren't getting because it was their fault. So
You're muted, Carlos.
Yeah, you muted Carlos.
Still muted.
You can use the mouse. Probably. Yeah. There you go.
Sorry, it was spacebar all of a sudden stopped working.
Yeah.
So anyway, yes. So yeah, it's good to have you back. Regardless,
Indeed.
so
Hey.
And
Well,
I know my voice sounds horrible, but I was like,
it actually doesn't sound bad.
too bad.
A little strange, but you sound
to
good.
be here tonight. So
Well, you are
We're
here.
glad you're back.
thank you very much, especially considering all the news we have tonight.
I know you must have
cover.
Yeah.
you must have been saturated with Baby Yoda crap and all this other stuff too. That you were like, "What's going on?"
The only thing that I saw the Baby Yoda thing, and the only thing that really piqued my interest was Perry Grip made a Baby Yoda song. So there you go.
Oh yeah, that I saw that. You should.
Well, how about we get started then, shall we?
Yeah, Carlos. What's our first topic? Let's get rolling.
Our first topic is a Star Trek topic. Big news this week as we discovered that the Star Trek movie franchise is not dead after all, as director producer Noah Hawley.
You mean the movie franchise?
The movie franchise, yes. Sorry about that.
That's
was announced as the next director of the next Kelvinverse movie,
Right.
which apparently will bring back, all the usual suspects in terms of the actors in some kind of a new story. We don't know what it's going to be.
Right.
But Noah Hawley does come with a lot of really great experience, award-winning shows, Fargo on the AMC channel, and Legion, which was on Fox, which is a Marvel franchise, one of the mutant franchises,
right.
and which also was really critically lauded. So they've got someone who's a good writer, a good director, a good producer behind it. The question is, will he be up to the task of Star Trek and its rambunctious fandom? What do you guys think?
If he can survive the X-Men fandom, he can survive Star Trek.
I'm not.
Well, except it's sort of a one-off X-Men fandom because it's really just. It was Charles Xavier's, son who was, he only occasionally comes up in the Marvel universe, and he did a great job about it, but it's not like he's doing, Wolverine and Phoenix and all of that, which a lot of people have attachments to.
They didn't even use the word mutant for the entire first season,
which is telling, isn't it?
Legion got a lot of critical acclaim. I never watched an episode, but I kept hearing good things about it. I think I've seen an episode of Fargo, so I'm not really familiar. I know his work. They picked it for a reason. I mean, all the things he's done has gotten, been well received. So I'm not sure what to expect from his style. Maybe he just that he knows how to tell good stories. Hopefully that's the case. Well, he's not writing it, is he? He's just directing it.
I'm not sure about the writing. I think he's just directing, though. But here's what's interesting about it is I see a lot of parallels here to what we saw with Wrath of Khan. One of the problems with the Star Trek movie franchise since J.J. Abrams took over was that its costs just kept ballooning. And
I'm still here if this camera goes off. Go ahead.
And and we saw a similar thing happen with Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which, by the way, we're doing our 40th anniversary retrospective in a few weeks.
Yep.
And what happened after that point was it cost so much money that even though it made a lot of money, it was just barely profitable. And at that point, the franchise could have died as in terms of being a movie franchise. Paramount decided to go ahead with it because they brought aboard a producer from television, and that's Harvey Bennett, who knows how to save money, because you have to know how to do that in television, and as opposed to having the bloated budgets you see in feature films. And interestingly, they're doing the same thing here with Noah Hawley. They're bringing someone who is creatively smart and talented, just like Harvey Bennett was, who knows how to tell a good story, and importantly, knows how to do it on a budget. So
he'd be restrained, like with Legion. He probably had with the lore, most directors might have wanted to say, well, we need a better special effects budget to do it properly based on the source material. But maybe he's good at, because like I said, I haven't seen it. Maybe he's good at keeping it restrained, even though you normally would want to exploit the superpowers.
Well, that's the theory. That's the way I'm looking at it, and it makes a lot of sense that they would be bringing a producer like that with that kind of storytelling expertise, as well as that kind of, budget mindedness that you absolutely need in
not trying to purely
television.
dazzle because you can,
Right. I mean, if you look back at Wrath of Khan, which is still considered one of the strongest entries in the Star Trek franchise, it was made for just a fraction of what the motion picture cost and a much better film.
Yeah. Were you going to say something?
I think you guys are missing a much bigger story, at least to me.
What?
The director, okay, well, we kind of get the gist of what the director is. They secured Chris Pine again.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a huge deal.
I mean, as far as we knew, he was done.
It was all about the money last time, though.
Well, yeah, Chris Pine's career took off after Star Trek.
Well,
his time is much more valuable now, and they weren't willing to pay that up front, so he wouldn't come back. So
unless
they got a director for television that knows how to save money to pay.
Exactly, you use what you would have used on a lot of unnecessary effects.
Alternatively,
hiring the good actor for the lead.
Alternatively, it doesn't look like they're bringing in Chris Hemsworth.
Well, no, that's...
But Hemsworth was an issue about more than just money. Money was certainly part of it, but it was more about the story, where he did not like the story they proposed for the senior Kirk in that earlier version. So that was, my guess is if they came up with an idea that appealed to him and that wasn't taxing on his time, that he'd probably reconsider.
Yeah.
We're going to get a lot less of in a Star Trek like this. We're going to get a lot less shit porn.
Yeah, I think you're right. Again, look at the motion picture. They reused shots from the motion picture. They found all kinds of ways to make it work, and still, because it was such a great story, what they did sink the money into, the effects that they did were amazing. The Genesis effect was, that was costly, but they skimped in other places in order to be able to pull something like that off, and that's exactly what television is like.
You gotta remember, the motion picture was nothing but shit porn.
Yeah.
How long was the flyby sequence? 5 minutes?
Oh my god! Well, that wasn't even the worst. It was like how all that time just going from one aperture in V'ger into another.
Well, even the Kobayashi Maru scene when the D7s was from the motion picture.
Don't forget the cloud itself. Just a slow roll introduction of V'ger inside of this massive cloud as it destroys Klingons.
Well, they reused that nebula multiple times. They just recolored it.
There was a quote for the movie that I remember pretty well, is that the director was doing his best Stanley Kubrick impersonation.
That's fair.
He really wanted it to be a Space Odyssey 2000 A Space Odyssey. Really.
Well, we know that they've hired the director. We don't know any details about the plot. I think what's going to more intrigue me is when I find out what the story or a little more than just they got a movie being made with this director.
Right. Well, we won't know that for a while, but I think the sign that we have so far is that this is a guy who knows how to tell a good story.
Yep.
So he's going to have to sign off on whatever the script is going to be, and if he doesn't like it, they'll rewrite it, or they'll find another writer, or both.
He knows how to tell a good story on a much smaller budget.
Exactly.
Well, you're going to have some CGI because
no one's saying you're not going to. They're just saying you're not just. It's not going to be porn. It's not going to be CGI porn.
It's brand new shit, though. That's the bad thing about it.
If you think about all the Star Trek movies, though, well, not all of them, but some of them, or not just Star Trek, a lot of sci-fi shows, they sometimes just do expensive, flashy effects just for the hell of it. And if you can find a way to make the story come first, the actors, and you only show the flashy special effects when it's going to move the plot along, and it's important not just for the hell of it, you can save a lot of money, I'm sure.
Well, but we live in a different time though now, George. I mean, we live in a time where to get a film into theaters just by itself, you're looking at probably at least $100 million
marketing and the
and then marketing on top of that.
Right.
So people don't go to the movies unless there's enough flash and sizzle.
Who all have they?
So that's going to make this a kind of a tough line to walk, because he's got to be able to do it for less money, but still have enough flash and sizzle to get people's butts in seats, rather than waiting until it shows up on Netflix or or somewhere else that they watch on.
What they will probably do, well, I would think they would probably do, they would probably update the ship interior sets so where they're not as elaborate as they was before, but more in line to what we saw in the previous movies.
Glenn
I think what you're going to see probably is like what they did in the previous movies, where they redressed existing sets for Next Generation. Or Voyager, or whichever ones were on at the time, and right now they have an extensive set of sets for Discovery, and will for Picard as well. So
the Dark Circle.
Well, yeah, the Dark Circle. But the point is that that's one of the ways that you can get around this.
Let me read a few comments from people in the chat, because a few people piped up. Anthony says, the Star Trek 2, no major alien makeup, only aliens were Spock and Savick. That's true, that I recall. Motion picture had a lot of good. Glenn says, motion picture would have been good for TV episode without the B-roll of the FX. It was actually they took the story from phase two
scripts.
Yeah. And then Shane says Stargate series was famous for it when it comes to budgeting the FX. Well, of course, their production system. That's the only reason, honestly, Shane, that I never got into Stargate, was because all the effects stuff was great, but it was the reverse. It was so cheap on the production wob sets and the reuse of the cheap looking.
The original Battlestar
and the costumes
Galactica
for all the
series.
Oh my God!
And every time they ran into a culture, it's like sometimes they used to do this in Star Trek too. They all wore the same jumpers, or nobody had style or culture anywhere, and then they had cheap, wobbly cities around them. And sometimes the compromise makes it kind of.
The original Battlestar Galactica series.
Star Trek Insurrection. Sorry.
George.
Ross, what? Go ahead.
No, sorry.
The original Battlestar Galactica series reused almost every single space action sequence. The radar contacts, the flight of the fighters, it was all reused for almost every single episode.
And think about it. In its time, though, it was the most expensive show on network television.
Yes, it was.
So that's even at inflated TV budget levels. So
it was the cost of a TV movie.
Well, they did the same thing with the Buck Rogers, which used the same cockpit interiors, joysticks, same production, some of the same sets. Buck Rogers and original Battlestar Galactica.
There was no glass,
but it was funny how they did that.
In the fighter cockpits.
There was no what?
No glass.
Oh, yeah. I like those joysticks.
The first and second Doctors as well, with the little TARDIS on a string.
Mm-hmm.
In the void, yeah.
Well, that's a whole other level.
The production values of Doctor Who is a whole different level.
Cheesiness.
They did the best they could. That's what. But anyways, so yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But we don't really have a lot to go on, except that they got this guy and there's a movie being. My quick question is: did they confirm any of the cast members besides Chris Pine and Zachary? Oh, Carl Urban too. I heard. But anybody else? Zoe, anybody else? Did they say?
Zoe Saldana, and I'm sure Carl Urban too. So I mean, you're going to see the four stars.
Wonder what they'll do about Chekhov.
They already said they're never going to replace him. They're just going to.
Well, I know.
They could change that. That's true.
They're not
going to change that. The question is, how are they going to handle it on screen?
Transfers, my guess. You get transferred.
Or is what's his name going to be back as Scotty?
Simon Pegg. That's a good question. My guess is probably.
Yeah. If he's not busy, if he's not tied up in some other project, and they can work out the schedule. That's usually part of the problem too. All right, so yeah, we're looking forward to a new Star Trek. Speaking of Star Trek, we had a poll, right, Carlos? We had a poll that we did because we want to start getting ready for the Picard series by doing a review each week of one of of what's considered the best of Picard's episodes that might even be an influence on what we might see as far as anything when it comes to him. The one that was voted, there was a couple that were close, but the one that had the most votes by the end of the poll was Who Watches the Watchers. And I had just watched it a few weeks ago, so I didn't really need to refresh, but I'm glad. That for me is one of the top ones. Who Watches the Watchers? So let's get started reviewing that. I want to start with let's start with Ross on this one.
Remind me which episode that is again.
It's the one where Picard, they're watching the bird watch.
They worship the Picard.
The duck blind. They're watching the Romulan or Vulcanoid people.
No, Proto-Vulcan.
Proto-Vulcan
The
species.
Mintalkans.
Right. The Mintalkans. And then they see beam ups and all that stuff, and then they debate with the scientists who got seen about whether to explain it and keep them in order about the religion thing, or if it's going to make chaos because it will create religion that could be lead to wars because they've seen godly acts. And then Picard decides, no, I'm going to explain how the magic works, and that leads into what made this episode a classic. So having refreshed your memory on that, Ross, what are your initial thoughts from what you remember?
I don't remember a lot from the episode, but I do remember Picard and the leader speaking together in the observation lounge,
right?
Comparing, telling her what her ancestors would think of her if they saw her today, and comparing that to how she sees him, and that's pretty powerful, right?
It was, yep. Yeah. What about you, son?
I'll be honest. This felt like one of the weaker episodes.
Oh, really?
For me.
Remember, it was third season.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that aside, this is a lot weaker of an episode to me. Just to me, the themes are strong. It just seemed like Picard himself was very tired of trying to explain this. Even from the get-go, he really didn't. He didn't seem like he didn't want to get involved. Then he had to get involved. Then he had to explain what
he wanted to give the benefit of the doubt that they could be reasoned with it to explain.
Right. He came to that conclusion.
Right.
But this entire episode, Picard seems like he just, oh my God, really? Do I have to do this? Okay. Trying to kill the guy because they.
Well, he didn't like the alternatives that the scientists and everybody would come up with.
Of course. So. Of course, the Mintalkans wanted to kill the scientists to appease him.
They wanted to control the religion instead.
Of course they didn't. Of course he didn't like the options. But this whole time, if you watch Picard, and I don't know if it was Patrick Stewart just being tired, or if it was Patrick Stewart really playing Picard being tired of what was going on. But
well, I think, again, you have to look at this in the context of the entire series. This is the third season, and it's one of the early episodes of the third season. Remember how awful the first and second seasons were. And he was still getting a handle on, I just rewatched it tonight, so this is very fresh in my mind.
Okay.
He was still getting a handle on Picard as a character. And there's some things that you see in here that are very reminiscent of.
Just to let you know, you are Skyping a little.
Just
so you know.
Season Picard's one. So, sorry, George, you interrupted me again.
I was just letting you know you were Skyping a little so you knew we were having a freeze.
Okay, got it. Okay, so he's still very much first and second season Picard in this episode. He's very short with some of the crew members, like he's very short with Beverly Crusher.
That's true.
He's pissed off at her because she's trying to save this guy's life, and thereby broke the Prime Directive. And she stands up to him, which to her credit. But that sense of impatience that you saw him display a lot in those early seasons was fully on display in this episode as well. But what you started to see was more of the glimmer of the captain that we all came to really love, and some of the humanity underneath that gruffness and that sort of hidebound by rules kind of approach that the early Picard was. And that's where you really saw that sort of begin to break through in that character and in Picard's characterization of him. I'm sorry, in Patrick Stewart's characterization of him. And, it was interesting to me, Ross pointed out that one of the strongest scenes in there was when he takes Nura, is the name of the leader, the woman who's the leader in this Proto-Vulcan community, onto the observation deck and to look down at her world. And it was very reminiscent to me of a very similar scene that we saw in Star Trek First Contact. With Alfred Woodard's character, whose name escapes me, but same thing. He brings her
Ellie.
out to the Enterprise, and what was that?
Ellie.
Right. And she
I like
looks
that
down
comparison.
and she kind of freaks out. In fact, she handles it less well than Nura, the Proto-Vulcan. They're still in the Bronze Age, and here we've got Alfred Woodard's character Ellie, who's in a post-nuclear age, and she's more freaked out that she's looking down. On
well, that was the big difference.
Insurrection too. Insurrection
Post-apocalyptic.
Well, what I mean is, Nora her society hadn't been, they were peaceful and didn't have wars. Whereas Ellie, what was her name again? You said Ellie. She had come from a conflict situation, and so they're
sure, but they were more technologically along, and
they understood the concept
of
how you
that.
Progress talk.
Yeah, I mean, they know about satellites, they know about orbits, they know about space, they know about planets. I mean, if you think about it, Nura had a lot more for her mind to be blown about than Alfred Woodard's character.
Oh yeah,
and I mean, it's like they use the same formula for different episodes because it's a cool formula. I mean, it really is. Let
me give my opinion. I have something I want to compare that some people might not like it, but Justin might like it. So when I watched it, it took me a few days to sink in what it was that was making me think about certain parts that when I watched it before, the first couple of times years ago, it didn't bother me. But when I watched it recently, one part of it did bug me. And don't hate me for this, but Seth MacFarlane, of course, pays tribute to TNG in many ways, but I never caught until I saw Who Watches the Watchers Again that he did it in the finale of Orville's last season, which was the one where Kelly accidentally inserted the religion of Kelly, and they were trying, and they kept revisiting the planet eons and eons later, and she was like the chaos that happened and all that. But by the time that they reached the planet in its age way beyond them, they were enlightened, perfect, super technology you can imagine. And she apologized for causing all the problems. And the line that one of the characters said to her from that planet, to me, was what was superior, that Seth took and borrowed from that and made one spin on it, that I like that better than saying, well, religion ruins everything, which is what Picard and everybody was saying, religion is hocus pocus. They never respect religion on Star Trek. Now, that's a separate issue. But in this episode of the Orville, what the guy said was, if it wasn't you, we would have worshipped somebody else. It doesn't matter. It's a phase that every civilization has to go through to get to this point. It's part of the growing pains. You just happen to be that person. So don't apologize. It would have been something else. And that was a much more interesting. Now, of course, because he took it and spun it.
Well, it's interesting
also
because it's wrong.
I'm just saying it sounded more interesting than just ripping on religion.
Well, because it's it's not the same that you've heard. But remember, Gene Roddenberry is very anti-religion, so
right. But he wasn't.
That's reflected in this storyline, in which the idea that the technological progress this race was making.
Well, they've made up for it anyways with Pike's beliefs in season 2 of Discovery.
Well,
it was also produced at different times.
Yeah, that's true.
And both TOS and
TNG. It's a fair.
Let Russ finish.
Both TOS and TNG were very cynical towards religion. Now that softened up after Gene's passing, and we saw different takes of it in both DS9, Voyager, Enterprise was even more cynical than the rest. And then now Discovery, which has a completely different take on it. The view of religion has softened a lot, and a lot of people can see both religion and science coexisting as two different ways of identifying of looking at the universe around us.
Right.
I think that's fair. But at the same time, you can't get past the idea that Picard espouses, which is true, that that religion is the cause of a great deal of suffering.
But that was in
history.
I understand
Abuse
where he was
religion.
coming from. It wasn't Picard that actually was the one who said it like that. It was the scientist. And the way he was trying to say, well, we'll just do this.
That too.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's the thing.
Remember
I thought you were supposed to rewatch the episode.
I just felt like Picard's stance on letting them believe in superstition just felt a little too much. But Picard, again, I'm going by the era they wrote it, the forward thinking. My personal view is the best sci-fi is going to look at history and the planet's development, and they're going to say, this. Who are we to judge whether these whether they should be believing in this. I mean, but of course, you have the prime directive, but yet you can judge. See, that's where it felt a little off to me. And Picard wanted to make sure they didn't have superstition. So in a way, he was imposing his values, and that goes against.
No, that's not what happened.
Well, I know from his point of view, I know, but
that's not what happened. In the beginning of this episode, and I haven't even watched it, so there you go.
Recently.
I haven't watched it in like the past year. So
right.
At the beginning of this episode, him and the scientists were talking, and the biggest argument Picard has is this is a society that has moved on from religion in its infancy, and here I am at the precipice about to throw them back into the Dark Ages.
I don't recall him saying they had a religion before, but I think you're right.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, you saw it recently. Okay.
I saw it tonight.
Okay, then you have
look, I haven't watched it in a year, and I remember that long.
I remember because the conversation in that observation deck, or whatever it was, the observation deck.
All right.
Was very interesting, but about how they're going to resolve the situation. Now, when it comes to Picard and Crusher, just another throwback to his argument with when Data had that pen pal, and he had that discussion about the Prime Directive with Pulaski and Riker, and what about war and all this, and Worf and Geordi, and they had that very fascinating Prime Directive conversation. Well, the medical officer always has a different way of looking at it in all of them. The only case where it was different, which is an episode I just saw recently, was Phlox in Enterprise, when he didn't want the captain to use his research to cure a genetic disease because he felt like the natural order was changing on that world, and because maybe one day there will be a Prime Directive, because he had the choice, like help these people, But that was the one case where a medical officer said, we shouldn't help them, and that was rare. But otherwise, the Prime Directive has always been argued by the medical officer.
But that's
we're out of time, folks, so we should move on to our next topic.
Real quick, though, out of 10 for this episode, since that we're going to be reviewing them, I'm going to give it a 8. What about you, son?
Give it a 7.
Carlos?
I'm with Son. 7 is about right.
Justin? You there, Justin?
About 8.5.
Oh, all right. And Ross?
I'll abstain since I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah, neither is some, but you can still, in general. All right, that's fine. It's fair. All right. So our next topic is an update to a case that we've been following on Super Geeks about a certain Mr. Vic Mignogna. Carlos, why don't you take the lead on this?
Well, the story of the film so far, Vic Mignogna filed a defamation suit against his former employer, Funimation Studios, and a number of their employees, his colleagues, other voice actors, and people who run that studio, which makes anime adaptations for the U.S. Anyway, so he, of course, had come under fire for sexual improprieties, and turned into a huge deal online with people coming out and accusing him of having done all this stuff, and it really put his livelihood at risk. And so to fight back, he filed this defamation lawsuit against them. They retaliated by claiming under Texas anti-SLAPP lawsuit that basically says he's trying to accused him of trying to shut them up, basically, but through the use of a lawsuit. And Texas, like many states, doesn't allow that. Or you have to come up with solid proof for that you're actually trying a case with merit rather than just trying to shut somebody up. So he lost that, and a lot of his case was thrown out by the judge. With that being the case, he's still appealing that, but also the defendants in the case, the people whom he claimed defamed him, asked for their lawyer fee, attorney's fees to be covered by Vic Mignogna, since he lost that part of the suit, that effort. And that was coming. They were looking at around $800,000 worth of costs that he would have had to bear. And so the hearing that was held this week was one. And by the way, the first time we saw him on the stand with anything regarding this case, And it was a big deal. The Dallas Morning News, we have a link to it in on our Trello if you want to read more of a blow-by-blow account of how that hearing went. Basically, the judge, the judge was going to issue a ruling today about whether or not he was going to impose sanctions and fees on Vic Mignogna. But he decided to delay that towards the latter part of the day today, saying he needed to review some testimony. And one of the things that, on the one hand, one of the things that Vic was able to show apparently to the judge seemed to accept it, was that he wasn't just doing this out of some sense of vengeance, but that he felt like his livelihood was really threatened. And this was the only way he saw, the only option available for him to be able to maintain his reputation or save his livelihood and so forth. But unfortunately, he also tried to make the case on the stand under oath that he had not even read his own, that he never read the full legal complaint that was filed, that his lawyers filed against the defendants, that he had never been involved in any kind of major litigation before. And the judge found most of that questionable, particularly when it came out later or earlier today that he in fact had been involved in a lawsuit back in 1997 in federal court, which was a copyright infringement case, shocker, over a song that he had done an arrangement for. He was suing a music company called Forefront Communications. And interestingly, you cannot find the legal complaint from that online anywhere. I spent a good chunk of the day looking for it, but I did find out it was dismissed with prejudices on all sides. So, something got worked out there. But the point is that he had been involved in litigation like this before and did not disclose that when asked about it in court. And so, so there's a lot of stuff that seems unlikely or wrong in what he did testify to in court this week, as well as the fact that alongside the fact that he really did sincerely seem like he was trying to salvage his reputation, but the two may not coexist well together in the judge's mind. We'll find out probably early next week, because this judge does tend to move pretty quickly with his decisions. So, which was why everyone was expecting it today. But the fact that he's reviewing some additional testimony means that something didn't sit quite right with him, and so he needs some further investigation before he issues his ruling. So we'll see what happens there.
How long do you think it'll be before we hear anything? Roughly.
I think it'll be sometime in the next week.
Oh, all right.
Probably right before Thanksgiving, because we'll probably want to try to wrap everything up before the holiday.
As always, we're just updating when there's anything new to report. It's not really anything big going on about it right now. Just that he may have a case when it comes to keeping the case going a little further. We'll see how things roll.
Okay, so there's something I would like to point out.
Good.
That and just from your explanation, Carlos. That is that, is it not possible that Vic actually forgot about that lawsuit?
I think it would be really hard to forget a lawsuit in federal court. It's not like it was a ticket. Like, I don't remember every ticket I've ever gotten, every traffic ticket or every parking ticket. This is a much bigger deal. This cost a lot of money. And it was about something that he cared about, a piece of music that he'd done arrangements for. It was copyright infringement, which means he was, defending his artistic work. I find it pretty unlikely that that would slip his mind. Most people who, especially those who have not had that much, been involved in that much litigation, something in a federal court would tend to stick out in your memory, and it when you combine it with the other things he claims to not know or not have done that a reasonable person would have done, taken all together, that doesn't really make him look very good. The other thing that happened this week was that a piece of property that he owns was conveyed from his personal property into a trust overseen by his mother, I think, or mother-in-law. I forget which of the two. Mother.
Oh, yeah.
And that just happened too. So, he claimed on the stand that he didn't even know how much his net worth was. So all those things together don't look really good for him. Because on the one hand, he says, I don't know how much I'm worth. But on the other hand, I just conveyed, a pretty expensive piece of property into a trust. And I presumably know how much that is worth because I signed off on it. So holding the two of those in the same
you're talking about one piece of property versus his entire net worth.
My point is that if he's conveying property into a trust, which is what people do to shield property from litigation, you should at least know how much that's worth because you just did it this week. And so, so if you're testifying, he's saying, I have no idea. And the reality is you do have some idea because you just made a major transaction with it. So
I might point out that
telling the truth.
I might point out that, he used to be best buddies with another embattled producer we all know, and that's also
there's some parallels there, but they haven't been best buddies in a very, very, very long time.
But
he's talking, of course, about Alec Peters.
I know. I know. And certain people don't like certain people.
They need to be very tight.
What Vic is doing is technically telling the truth.
But the problem is that while he may be technically telling truth on each one of those points, when you put them together, it does not paint a portrait of someone who really is telling the truth overall. And I think that's one of the reasons why the judge is looking back at testimony to see how
it's understandable. That's understandable, but you can't praise all these people who go out there and say he's outright lying.
That's why I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is he's casting a lot of what he's saying into doubt.
Not saying that you are, but that's the line that a lot of people are using to say he's lying about everything.
What was that thing I saw about Monica Ray, the one that was suing him? He was suing for defamation. She showed up in court, and what was it about the money thing? I can't remember.
Well, there's a whole thing. I don't know about her, but there was a whole line of questioning around Nick Rekieta, the Minnesota lawyer who's
the YouTube guy,
hundreds of $1,000s, for him. And it's kind of a weird because her lawyer, even in the depositions in the case, kept pressing on this, like trying to show some kind of collusion between Vic Mignogna and Nick Rekieta, and Vic's whole line on this, which, by the way, I do believe, because I think he does sound believable in this instance, where he says, I don't control that fund at all. And Nick Rekieta is raising that money on my behalf, but I do not control it.
Yeah, it's like with the NOS.
I didn't even want to do it at first, but he's the one.
I can explain this. I can explain this really easily. Mm-hmm. Lemoyne has personal beef against Nick because Nick nonstop rags on his ass.
It's true, and I agree with you on that.
So, they want that GoFundMe money back.
Doesn't it seem a little strangely parallel to the NOS and Nerdrotic handling his?
I do have to say some of these pictures from the Dallas Morning News are hilarious to me. There's the picture of Nick and Ty, and is that Lemoyne behind them? The picture of
I only see the one picture, so I don't have the full thing in front of me.
There's a picture of Vic and Ty standing in the foreground, and then there's another male behind them, like across.
Sean O'Halloran, our Sean, is in the chat. He says, "Someone get son a lozenge."
I know, poor son.
Well, that is a most unfortunate picture because one of the things Nick Rekieta has gone on and on and on about is Lemoyne being the quote unquote lemon Fuhrer. And Lemoyne has a microphone in front of him, and it makes it look like he's got a Hitler mustache.
By the way, son, between segments,
I mean,
drink water or something. Don't kill yourself trying to partake.
yeah, I think there's definitely something personal going on between these lawyers.
Yeah, definitely.
And with Nick Rekieta, who he just goes on for hours, and he's so
He's
smarmy.
on now. Uh-huh.
He's probably on now.
I haven't seen any.
Wait a minute.
But even the judge was like, "Can we get back?" He's like, "You're fighting about stuff that's on the internet. Can we get back to what's actually, going on before us?"
The judge was fed up with Lemoyne by the whole end of it, just about.
Yeah.
Hey, there's one more thing. If you scroll down even further, there's a picture of Ron Toye and Monica Rial. And I shit you not, it looks like bearded Deadpool and the mom from Home Alone.
It does. It does. It does. I need to find a picture of Ron Toye real quick.
Trying to get Sean to come in here. He says, "I'm not supposed to be on tonight, right?" And I said, "It's up to you." Everybody say Sean.
Sean.
For those of you who are listening, if you want to see what Son is referring to, the link to the Dallas Morning News story is in our Trello for tonight's podcast. And so you can
I just want to point out and shout out, good job on that Trello. It's awesome. And I'll link it in the YouTube version too, just to make sure. But Trello too. I'll link that. So Ross,
hello.
Ross, I kind of sense like you had something you wanted to say about the Ruby thing aspect of all this, or am I wrong?
Oh, well, it's tangential. Vic's last major role as all of this was coming out was in the Rooster Teeth production Ruby. It's exploded in recent years. It's hugely popular, but as these allegations were coming out, he was removed from the cast without very much ceremony. A new voice actor has been cast in the role as Uncle Crow, Vic's previous role, and he's pretty close, but you can tell the difference.
All right.
Sort of like the guy who ended up doing Kermit the Frog's voice isn't quite there.
Or kind of like Lieutenant Savick in between Star Trek 2 and 3.
Oh, yeah. Well, at least they went with an entirely different actress, so, you just have to...
Yeah, but it's the same
you
character,
that
but
they're different people
with different flavors. Yeah,
that's true. Anybody have any other thoughts about the
or like the Robin Williams impersonators for the Aladdin sequels?
Oh my!
I guess my only thought is that we're just it's just an update to the situation, and
hey, look, iPhone.
It's not like. But a lot of people are getting the wrong. I do want to point out a lot of people are still ignorant out there. I've seen that think that they think that this Vic thing they think it's the other way around. They think he's being sued about the accusations when it's not. It's the other way around. He's suing people for defaming him or defamation.
Yeah. You see, this is very common, and you see it in the Anas Abdin case as well, where he's even taking advantage of it by claiming that he's defending himself when he's the one who brought suit against CBS. So it's not uncommon to see that the person who's actually pursuing is the one being pursued.
It's the O'Halloran family. Hello.
I got a new hat.
Hey, O'Halloran.
I just stopped in to say hi.
Christmas music.
Oh yeah, I've had it go since November 1st. In fact,
it's Riri.
You monster.
Chief Otter in the house. Yeah, I
was playing that real life game, Dad Stranding.
Oh, we got a pinata too. Okay,
oh,
I just stopped by to say hi. I was watching the chat and I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be on the night or not. We're doing the Mandalorian show on Sunday, right?
On Sunday
at 9 Pacific.
Oh yeah, a little earlier. We already talked about that night. Yeah.
All right. We're at the new house tonight. I'm just
oh cool. Congratulations.
Internet. So
hopefully the ducks will find you.
They stalk me. They'll find me. Don't worry.
They'll find you. They know who you are.
No question at all. They will find me. You're in waiting. I got a new hat though, Mr. Matt. Okay, I'll see you guys later.
See you, Sean.
Peace out. See you Sunday.
Bye.
Thank you, Wheelie Pike.
There's a drive-by by Sean and his family. or his kids.
Guys,
I'm still in.
You're still
Alright.
on.
Hold on.
Hi, Sean.
There you go.
We still
Bye.
hear you.
Shane,
Cool. Well, anyway, so we'll probably have an update to the Vic Mignogna story next week after the judge
still connected,
presumably
Sean.
puts out
Sorry.
his decision. So remember, we're going to be on Friday after Thanksgiving. So everybody have a happy Thanksgiving on Thursday, but we will be around on Friday.
Awesome.
Right.
Did you guys talk about Shane's comment?
Yeah, I was about to say, Shane made a comment that Ruby, Rooster Teeth wants at all levels to remain kid friendly, seeing that they are a Disney company. Yeah,
they're not a Disney company.
Wait, they're
a Warner Brothers company.
Warner, yeah.
Oh, are they?
That's right. I was thinking.
And Rooster Teeth is not kid friendly.
Yeah, they're
at
not.
all.
Aren't they Adult Swim? Aren't they Adult Swim?
Ruby is an outlier that's for all audiences, but Rooster Teeth is absolutely not.
I've never watched it. That's why I don't know.
Oh, hell no.
Oh,
Wait
man.
a minute. No, it's even worse
very
than that.
adult.
Always have been.
It's even worse than that. As Ruby, or not Ruby, Rooster Teeth itself is kind of in hot water.
Yeah.
As their, what was it, CEO or one of their presidents has been arrested for beating his wife.
Wait,
Jesus
what?
Christ.
All right, before we talk about that, let's
put that in
All right,
chat.
good.
I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, put it in chat. But let's move on to what Ross is going to do, and Carlos has to do something to his modem for a minute to get things less leggy. But Ross is going to give us a good review of the game that made him hump the air last episode and made everybody in the chat get excited, and that was Death Stranding. As he explained, there was a reason why he was doing his little famous move that made everybody keep talking about it for a while, including people in the chat. But it was funny, and there's a good reason for it because there's a story behind it. But
Yes.
Ross, why don't you start telling us about Death Stranding? And
Since I haven't played this game yet, I'm going to go take it off real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay.
So, first things first, Death Stranding is a game by Hideo Kojima. Now, if there is a Martin Scorsese or a Steven Spielberg of video games, that is Hideo Kojima. He creates things that are different and unique in gaming, and that's exactly what he set out to do with Death Stranding. At its core, the game is about delivering cargo from one place to another, most often on foot. That alone might make it sound a little boring, a little dull, but there are obstacles and difficulties in between. There is the terrain itself, which is largely untamed, overgrown, and rough. There are rogue, I guess you could call them package addicts. They get a thrill out of stealing and hoarding cargo on their own. They will
basically
attack you.
Bandits and raiders.
Yeah, except they're not out to kill you. They're just out to steal your cargo. And then the premier obstacle is the BTs, invisible creatures that, if they catch you, will drag you across the map and separate your body from your soul.
That's what the chest feeders part. I want to really know why you were doing that.
The only way you can detect the BTs is the character's ability to sense them, and with the aid of a BB unit, which is a fully developed fetus in a tank attached to your chest. And if you are in the vicinity
stands
of these,
for bridge baby.
yes.
Wow.
If you're in the vicinities of these BTs, he starts to get agitated and upset, and one of the ways you can calm him down
Stem
is
cell
using motion
research
controls and kind of shake it up and down, back and forth.
Wow. So you
Sing it lullabies.
You had to do it like that in order to.
Yes. I was in an. Also, if you fall down, that can also agitate the BB.
Huh.
Falling down also damages the cargo you're trying to take, and if your cargo gets too damaged, the people you're delivering it to won't be too happy. Now, that is all the technical side of everything. That by itself might seem a little interesting, a little challenging. The first time you encounter BTs is freaking terrifying, because you can't see them.
I'd be terrified too if I had to hump the air in order to.
You can't see them, You can barely sense them, and you have no defense. You are helpless.
Not even
The
fetus
only
baby?
The chest babies are so you can detect them. So you have a general idea of where they are so you can escape. There's no fighting the BTs early on.
So you're putting little fetuses in harm's way. That's cool.
It's a unborn fetus that is connected to a still mother somewhere else.
That's arguable. Anyways, I'm just kidding. Carry on.
Anyway, the setting of the game is one of the things that really sets it apart. At some point in the near future, the world of the living and the dead have crisscrossed in an event called the Death Stranding. That is what has created the BTs. That is why whenever someone dies, they have to be incinerated before their body explodes and creates a city-sized crater, killing everyone inside and creating a chain reaction of more events, creating more BTs, and pretty much wiping out civilization as we knew it. The humanity is gathered in cities and shelters dotting the landscape, and they have isolated themselves from each other for their own protection. And the goal of the main character is to travel from one city and shelter to the next, reconnecting people through a chiral network, kind of like an internet that sends signals through the death world. As you connect people, you unlock new abilities, you unlock the ability to construct structures and eventually build things like watchtowers, like bridges, like roads. And the unique thing about all this is that you're not doing it alone. You, by yourself, are alone in this world. You're going on a very solitary journey, but other players can contribute to what you're doing. You pick up their lost packages.
Yeah, I heard about that.
You can call out and other people can hear you. You can set up structures and other people can use those structures. You set a foundation for a bridge and other people contribute materials for that bridge to create it. The same thing with roads. And this kind of asymmetrical multiplayer really adds a flavor to this game that I haven't experienced anywhere else before.
People like a much better No Man's Sky.
I want to say real quick that I was impressed by their choices of actors in the mocap that recreates them. The guy from The Walking Dead, for example,
Norman Reedus,
who's the leader, the main character. Right? Was he the guy you were playing with the chess with the humping?
Yes.
Okay.
Norman Reedus is the player character.
Right.
They've also got Mads Mikkelsen as one of the bad guys.
Oh, really?
Yep, he actually appears a lot in your Bridge Babies Memories.
Oh, isn't he in the city that's almost like fascist kind of thing? I think I've seen it.
Not sure yet. I haven't gotten there. I've
seen some game
I'm only about a
clips,
third of the way through the game.
Okay.
So there's still a lot I haven't seen. There's a lot I haven't experienced yet. This
seems like a trippy game.
Just from the first third of the game.
It's trippy. The trailers made me go, "What am I watching?"
Well, that's Hideo Kojima for you.
Good graphics. I just kind of confusing.
Hideo Kojima layers a story within a story within a story.
Yeah, I heard that.
And usually all of it has this weird, even deeper meaning if you sit there and just think about what he's talking about.
Yeah, I
Kojima,
heard that about him.
He does a lot in sci-fi, but he always...
What has he done for movies or anything besides games?
He hasn't done anything in movies, but he's a big film fan, and he tries to create games that have a very cinematic feel to them.
Okay.
You probably know him from his previous games in the Metal Gear series.
I didn't know if he had written other things besides games.
It's primarily games is what he's done. His ambition is to create films, but his primary medium is games.
Gotcha.
But he took all of the cutscenes just from Death Stranding alone, just the cutscenes, and put them all together in a single YouTube video. It came out at 9.5 hours long.
Oh,
but you know, it takes a whole different type of storytelling skill to write all the different possibilities of a story in a game, and that takes that's.
Oh yeah,
that kind of people don't give that enough credit.
That's what set Metal Gear on the map. It was one of the first. Metal Gear Solid was one of the first games to really tell a cinematic story within a completely new genre of games. He pioneered the stealth action game, which led to things like Splinter Cell and Deus Ex. And what he's doing with Death Stranding is creating something really, really different and unique.
I do want to watch all the
there is conflict. There are boss battles. I completed the first one, and wow, it's so freaky, so weird.
And you've been airing it on your Twitch. You playing it,
Yes.
live streaming it. I mean,
yes, for the last.
so go to
couple days,
Russ's Twitch, by the way, to see him playing it to understand what he's talking
I was
about.
playing it today before the podcast.
Yeah, I noticed that. I just didn't get a chance to get over there.
But the video on demand is there.
Right.
Son?
It's the game is actually really interesting, and it is the game itself. Just the mechanics of the game draw you into playing the game because it's compelling. Ross was talking about this on his live stream today. It's amazing how there are people in the gaming industry that can make these mundane tasks enjoyable. And I brought up the fact that Animal Crossing is literally a game about you paying off your mortgage.
Oh yeah, one of the
Please.
funnest games I played lately is Police. We have the police, and it's simply you're in charge of the police of a corrupt city, and you have to pick and choose and your officers and hire new ones and send them into various crimes and things going on, and figure out who to pair with who, and those It's a simple concept, but it's fun. I mean,
with Death Stranding, the primary mechanic is you're a delivery boy.
Yes.
Underneath all of that is there's this massive story of a post-apocalyptic world and you trying to bring it back together.
You're trying to reconnect cities to this network to reform the United Cities of America. You're convincing secluded and isolationist doomsday preppers to come back to civilization. You are threading these strands from people to try and bring everyone together. And there are people out there who see this as a threat, or they want to see humanity die, so they're trying to break those threads as you're forming them. It's an incredible story with a very different kind of narrative that you don't see a lot in games.
when you finish the game, I want you to give an update on your thoughts on it. I know that
Yes.
I know that there's more than one way to end a lot of these games. So it's like, but I'm not talking about your first ending.
There's only
Your
one
first
ending to Death Stranding.
There is?
At least
Oh,
I
all right.
think.
That's the beauty of something like a Kojima game. It can give you what seems like so many possibilities and so many choices and still be a linear story.
I was saying, Carlos, to these guys that a lot of credit of the game. Some game writers don't get enough credit for the kind of they have to write sometimes these complex stories that have multiple outcomes and like layer it into
its own kind of
full
writing,
narrative.
sure.
It's its own
That's
skill
David
set.
Cage.
Yeah.
That's David Cage.
Kojima is an auteur, and it really shows in his work.
So what would you so far? You've been playing it for how long now?
I'd say I'm about 10 hours in or so.
10 hours in. How many days have you played it?
2
in 10 hours. Okay. All right. And so far, you're enjoying it better than most of the other.
Three.
Do you think you're enjoying it more than a lot of the other games you played recently?
I am significantly enjoying
You're
it.
invested because of the story and the characters, and not just.
I was invested, one, because of who created it. There's been a lot of hype
Right.
going into this game because partly because of how Konami, his previous publisher, had mistreated him in the development of Metal Gear Solid 5. And then he went over to Sony, who gave him carte blanche. Sony gave him carte blanche to do whatever he wanted.
He's
And
right. He's
this
got a
is
good
it.
reputation,
Oh, yeah.
and he did Metal Gear, so that gave him some good. He had a good portfolio going on.
He has a lot of clout.
All right. Well, keep us updated on because you only just got into it, so 10 hours, and then let us know later.
If you're
Updates.
like me and you can't afford to go out and buy it, watching a streamer play it is just as captivating.
I wouldn't have been able when I do Jedi Fallen Order review for Sunday. I wasn't going to pay right at this point anytime soon for the full game. Then someone reminded me, "Do you have EA Origins still going on monthly? It's $5." I said, "Yeah, you can play it for free right now." And I downloaded it and started playing it today. And I'm like, "Okay." So instead of paying like $50, I paid my $5 EA Origins. I can play Jedi Fallen Order for free as long as I'm still subscribed.
I will be splitting my time between Death Stranding and BattleTech. The newest expansion just came out. But don't worry, there will be plenty more chest humping.
And for Ross's Twitch people, How you doing?
Twitch.tv/live_love_.
And that's where you can also check his archives of his gaming on this game if you want to see.
And I am broadcasting on
Tell me
Twitch
one
right
quick
now.
thing before we move on. Do you air hump at all more in today's live stream?
Not as much today.
Because you got everybody excited last week. They just want to know. All right.
No, but I did fight off an entire camp of mules, so those are the package stealers.
But did you air hump while doing it? That's all I want to know.
I air humped after it in celebration.
All right. A victory air hump. Okay. That's almost like the Running Man. Okay. All right. And real quick before we move on to our next topic, I also wanted Justin to give us a quick short update on he's been alpha testing the new Orville VR experience.
Beta.
Oh, is it beta? Okay.
Yeah,
I thought you said alpha the other day.
Oh, beta.
You've been showing us pictures of as you test it out. How's it going?
It's actually going pretty good. There's still a lot of bugs. Anyone can join the beta right now if you go to the Messy Desk Interactive Facebook and join the Discord. There's a link on the page, and you can join. There's instructions on how you can join the beta. Now it's buggy, but there's some cool stuff coming, and you'll get to be a part of testing the game out until the public alpha whenever it's ready to go. We got some great stuff in the works.
Well, we'll try to make that available both on the Trello and YouTube when I upload it. That sounds cool. All right, so it looks like our next topic, Carlos, what's our next topic? We did the Death Stranding.
Next topic is Charlie's Angels.
It flopped.
It flopped, and it's continuing. Movies flop all the time, but what makes this one different really picks up a thread that we started talking about a bit last week.
And Elizabeth Banks' comments, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, which revolves around the same thing, which is the whole idea of get woke, go broke. And, this theme that you're seeing on Twitter and other places where people, mostly men, are saying that by pandering to feminism, you're not going to be able to make money because people don't want to be pandered to.
How exactly is a movie based on a property from 30 years ago pandering to feminism?
Well,
I mean, did you see the movie?
No, I didn't even know it was out.
Okay,
I think that's part of the problem. Did they even market it?
Yeah, they did actually.
Yeah, they did.
They quite a bit, but
I heard a lot of good things about it, but it failed.
I haven't seen it, and I wasn't interested in seeing it.
Me either.
And
sexist, you absolute sexist.
Oh, not at all. I never liked Charlie's Angels.
I don't
didn't
like the
it when it was on
Hangover movies.
television.
It doesn't mean I hate
I
guys.
didn't like any of the reboots that they did. The older stuff was kind of okay, but nothing that they've tried.
I saw the commercial for this a few times in the last week because, no internet, which means more TV. I saw Patrick Stewart in this commercial, and my only question was, is he Bosley? If he's Bosley, this might be worth
Well, not Bosley, but he plays the same role.
Bosley is a woman played by Elizabeth Banks, who directed the movie.
Oh, okay. Well,
I will say
worse than Ghostbusters 2016.
Well, hold on.
I will say, Kristen Stewart looks insanely hot in that haircut.
I don't agree with that, but I do think she's hot in general. I just don't like the haircut.
She, in general, has been getting really good reviews, actually, in this film, where a lot of people don't like the movie. They love her in it, and I think that's really good.
I can.
But here's the thing. I mean, and the whole reason why I thought this was worth our taking a look at it again, because we're going to see this again and again. This whole idea of trying to be a woke movie will not make you money, and I think that people who are trying to point to this movie as an example of that are missing some really key fundamental problems with how this project was put together, beyond the idea of it being more of a more feminist version of Charlie's Angels.
Yeah.
Part of it was, I mean, from the beginning, first of all, it doesn't have a very strong story. And because the budget is relatively low, a lot of the action sequences are things you've seen before. I mean, there was nothing that really stood out from it. Apart from Kristen Stewart, the other two
never even heard of them before. Kristen Stewart's awesome.
I mean, one of them's a British actress, so I know her because I watch a lot of stuff out of England. But if you don't know her. The other, there just isn't any kind of star power there. And Kristen Stewart has not been in anything, so, big budget in a long time, probably since Twilight. And most of her fans have like aged into a whole different demographic. So,
Right.
so going in, they didn't
Well, the
have
Snow
like
White movies. She did the Snow White movies, the Huntsman and all that stuff. That was kind of big.
which were flops, by the way.
Yeah, that's true.
So, so I mean, the idea that she was going to be enough name power to get attention for this movie, I think.
Well, Patrick Stewart too.
Yeah, but
Again,
you know what?
He's in a small role.
Let me.
It just wasn't enough.
Let me chime in real quick. My opinion. The problem with the Charlie's Angels movies, I listen to Elizabeth Banks.
First of all, this is not like the other ones. The other ones were
no,
done
I know,
by
I know that
they're very different. So you shouldn't say the Charlie's Angels movies because this one is very different from.
Yeah,
the
that's
others.
fair, but that leads into part of what I was going to say. Elizabeth Banks, by the way, a lot of people misunderstanding her. She made those comments before the movie came out, based on
the comments were before.
Based on something else from the pre-crap hate people were giving. It wasn't really a comment to try to excuse what happened. It was, but anyways, that's a separate thing. The thing for me, the reason why I believe that the movie flopped is Charlie's Angels was a fantastic TV series.
Disagree, but go ahead.
Well, I liked it at the time. It was true, it was what it was, like Bionic Man and everything. But when the first movie came out, they did at least a couple of them with that same cast.
Yes.
And then they did another one with Charlize and a couple. I don't even remember if it was the same group.
Lucy Liu movie.
Right,
Lucy Liu,
Cameron Diaz.
When you're doing a franchise like this in a modern time, if the first one's a hit and you got a certain cast, a certain group, and you make another one, and that does well too, that tells you people are returning to see this group of people. When you keep then making new ones with a whole
first of all, there's only been 3, and there's like 10 years in between them. So
yeah, that's true.
Between the first 2
but you can't
and this
expect
last one.
the name,
and
brand,
the other thing you're forgetting, George, is that those 2 film versions, the first one did pretty well. The second one did not do that well, which is why they didn't make a third one, which is why they waited 10 years to make another one, and it took a different tack.
First one, though, was
not a great
decent,
tack.
yeah.
But the idea that Charlie's Angels is a franchise is ridiculous. It's
a brand.
It was a schlocky 70s series that had, I watched it. I was 12. But the idea that there's enough there to do motion picture after motion picture, and then to do it at a cut rate, because Elizabeth Banks is no McGee. McGee directed those first 2 films, and he has a very signature approach to how he makes action movies. And Elizabeth Banks, bless her heart, is not up to that, and she didn't go the other direction in terms of making it have a really strong story to be able to stand up on its own 2 feet.
Her whole thing was that men don't want to see women action movies. That's not true at all. That's one.
Do you guys know that there was a 2011 TV series reboot of Charlie's Angels?
There was. But see, the thing is that when you go to see a Charlie's Angels
which
movie,
also failed.
They didn't remake another
1 season and 7 episodes of that season.
But the reason some of the comments that people like Elizabeth Banks are making don't work for me is they're making it sound like this was going back to what Justin said, the Ghostbusters 2016 thing was just not even slightly the same. Because the reason people didn't like that is because they were ignoring the past movie and just rebooting it with women instead of making it the same universe but a different group of Ghostbusters. Hold on. Charlie's Angels is not changing the rules or totally redoing and altering what was on TV that made it popular. It's a continuation of a group of female action agents doing their thing. And so to say that people don't want to see female action heroes, I mean, most of the big movies right now that people are liking have female heroes that are the lead.
Here's the problem. If you have any movie that does not have enough women in it, you get people saying movies being sexist. If it's vice versa, if you have a movie that has a lot of women in it, it's feminist. There's no happy medium anymore.
It's a Charlie's Angel movie, though.
Charlie's Angels
don't matter.
Look, I think the problem here is that people are trying to read into this movie and its failure more than what's there.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because, and trying to make it an example of, go woke, go broke. And that's not what's at play here. What's at play here is just that it wasn't a very well put together project. and so people didn't go to it.
Sure, that's definitely the majority of it, but it doesn't help that you have people like the director lady stepping out in front of it and making basically assholish comments like that.
Yeah, I didn't hear the comments, but I'm sure
what she said was people have to go to see this movie because if they don't, this proves that they're.
Oh yeah, you can't blackmail an audience. That's bullshit.
She said, look,
Grimm
people have to
Twitch
buy tickets
chats.
to this movie too. This movie has to make money. If this movie doesn't make money, it reinforces a stereotype in Hollywood that men don't go see women.
That's bullshit. Susanna, being a woman, by the way, says, I'm only a woman, but the way I feel about Charlie's Angels, it was fun to watch back in the old days. I like their femininity attitude back then. It flopped because the story plot failed for me. Okay.
Dr. Grimm in Twitch chat says the 70s show was awesome. Farrah Fawcett rules.
Well, they also swapped out members of the group, too, within the show. So, it did give the precedent where you can alter who the main cast is because it's an agency of some sort, which is fine.
Yeah, I just don't see it as once you got past the first big movie version of it, it just didn't have, if you'll pardon the expression, the legs to go much farther as a feature series, and apparently not. Thanks, Ross. And apparently not even as a TV series, as Sun pointed out, because it didn't even make it past 7 episodes. You said.
Here's another thing. That lady's comments. Why is she focused so hard on men going to see this movie?
Because so have you heard about the quadrant theory of feature films, the economics of feature films?
No, I haven't. No. But the biggest thing in my mind is she was talking about how this was supposed to be a feminist movie. Why is she not pissed off that women didn't go see this movie?
Here's the problem, and this explains it. Okay, so in Hollywood, there's a theory around the economics of films and how you reduce the risk and make as much money as possible. It's called the 4-quadrant theory, and basically it's about splitting the audience, film audience, into 4 quadrants. One is males. You have one axis, which is males to females, and then you have another axis which is over 25 to under 25. And so the problem here was that as many of those 4 quadrants as a movie can appeal to, the more successful it is likely to be. And the problem with this movie is it was really only a 1-quadrant movie, which means that from the get-go, out of the gate, it had already limited its economic potential because it only filled one of the 4 quadrants.
Doesn't that lend itself to that mentality of get woke, go broke? Because it is
because that's not about being woke. Being woke is not this. It does not mean it's exclusively for women.
I hate that thing. I hate it.
The audience. Well,
it's just an oversimplification of a much bigger deal.
Right.
And unfortunately, they're trying to make this one movie be an example of much more than it is. It was just a really badly put together project. And so it failed, which movies fail all the time. But to try to turn this into somehow an example of appealing to women means you're going to fail. That's not how this works, folks. Look at a movie like Aliens or Captain Marvel.
Right.
Those were multiple quadrant films with women stars, women action stars.
Exactly.
That did well. So it's not the idea that having a woman action lead
pretty good.
Doesn't mean that they're going to that people aren't going to go to see it, but it does mean that you have to make some explicit outreach to those other quadrants if you want to maximize your potential for
of
making
course,
money.
It's
pretty simple.
Well, the basic idea is that the whole argument about what happened with Ghostbusters, again, is that they flipped things around, which didn't matter to me, but that was the reason people were trying to sabotage it. But the thing with Charlie's Angels and movies like that is people know what they're going to see. They're going to see an all-female ass-kicking group. That's the whole theme. So it's not like that, for them to say that it was because men don't like action. Black Widow is highly anticipated. That prequel movie hasn't come out yet, but their test audiences, they're predicting it's going to do quite well.
And why? For the same reason that Captain Marvel did, because you have a studio like Marvel, which knows how to make movies
A
that
good
appeal
movie.
to more than one quadrant.
Yep.
And that's why Captain Marvel made $1 billion. That's why Aliens is a classic film. It knew how to appeal to more than one quadrant. It's really pretty simple economics.
You can't hide behind the fact that sometimes a movie just gets made bad and try to use an agenda to shield it and say, that's why my excuse is that's why.
Let's be honest. There are two classic 80s badass women, Sarah Connor and Ripley.
Not after the last Terminator.
Well, Ripley was, late 70s, early 80s, and Leia, Princess Leia.
84.
Yeah, it was
Leia.
80s, George. Terminator was 80s.
Alien, though, was 79, I believe.
80s.
It was
80s / 90s was all the best movies.
I swear it was 79. Okay.
And that's
I
why
don't
they're all
agree
being
with that.
remade.
All right. Well, either way, but generally speaking, that is true. But yeah, so just to say, well, to not just admit, well, maybe you should look. The Charmed reboot might be a fair example. If they try to be really woke and diverse and redoing it, it didn't last more than a season. But
Well,
that doesn't mean that's why.
Also, television, which is a
Yeah,
totally
that's true.
different economic model, so you can't really.
I
you
never
can't really
heard
compare the two.
I never heard anything about people sabotaging the Rotten Tomatoes for Charlie's Angels this time. They're saying,
I don't think there was any sabotage.
I never
think
heard
it just
anything.
wasn't a good film. It's really that simple.
I've had different friends review it.
I think the problem is that the juries, we don't have enough data on the whole notion of to prove or disprove get woke, go broke. There just isn't enough.
Right.
There's these are all anecdotal outlying movies in some cases that people are trying to force fit into an agenda either for or against, and we don't have enough information to come to any
Let's be honest. Let's be honest, though. If it wasn't for the outrage partly generated by the director itself, we wouldn't be in this position at all. Charlie's Angels would have flopped. It would have flown under the radar. Nobody would have known about it, and it would have went away quietly.
And in her defense, a lot of this was coming from interviews before the movie even came out.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. Elizabeth Banks, her comments are being mistakenly put as she said it after the movie came out. It was before. Because of the early reviews before the movie came out.
So that makes the question, do you think she knew it was a flop before it came out?
No, she knew that it was going to get shit, is what she basically said, because the critics and everybody ahead of time, test audiences or whoever, and she was basically saying, well, she used some comparison about how superhero movies are different and how if it's a I don't know what.
How superhero movies apply to men even if they have female
something
roles.
about the female, the men don't want to see the female led
Well,
movies.
that's what she said, but
That's
I mean, I think
that's bullshit considering Charlie's Angels has always been about the male gaze.
I don't remember the details,
Yeah,
but there
has.
was
That's
part
true.
of her thing was actually fair, but I can't remember which part. I should've wrote
but
it.
here's the difference, though, son, that I think is important to point out is that this is the first time one of the Charlie's Angels movies was directed by a woman, and Elizabeth Banks,
Oh, all right. That's
who had a very successful directorial effort in her first movie, which was one of the reasons why they handed this movie over to her to make, because she was now a successful.
Oh, wait a minute. Elizabeth Banks directed and was in the movie?
No. Yes. She
Oh,
was.
I didn't know that.
What
She
was her
plays
first
Bosley.
one?
Pitch Perfect 2.
Yeah, they made her look older.
Yeah.
It made a ton of money, dude, and that's what this is about.
You know.
So that franchise was very successful, and so that's what they expected this
Too
to be. I mean, basically,
successful.
a popcorn bubblegum kind of movie, and that's what she was aiming to make. And unfortunately,
What's
it got
School
cast
Musical,
in this.
the movie.
Someone
It
remind me, what studio put out this movie? What studio makes Charlie's Angels? Who
Oh,
has the
gosh,
rights?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. But anyways. All right. Anyone have any last thoughts before we move on about this?
Nope, I'm ready.
All right. Okay, so what's going on with the Snyder Cut and all this crap? I don't know. Nobody knows if WB is trolling everybody, getting the actors to say something, or if they really – WB insists they have no Snyder Cut they're going to release. But we got Gal Gadot, we got Ben Affleck, we got Henry Cavill, I believe, and other people saying, release the Snyder Cut. It just added some kind of a weird thing that just started happening out of nowhere. Like people thought it was some kind of campaign to hint that they're going to try to see if people want to agree and get them to release the Snyder Cut. I think it's a bunch of hokey pokey bullshit, but I don't know what's going on. Carlos, do you have any idea?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's bullshit. I mean, there are a lot of people who like Zack Snyder's take on the DC universe.
I meant bullshit in terms of if it's going to really happen or not.
Well, none of us knows the answer to that, because the
Right.
problem, of course, is that we don't know the condition of. I mean, there was a Snyder cut to a
Right.
certain degree, but remember, someone came in at the end to finish it, and
Joss Whedon, yeah.
yeah, and so it wasn't a completed movie even before he finished, walked away. So there was
Right.
never a complete Snyder cut. There was a
Hmm.
take he was going to bring on it, and there was a lot of rewriting that Joss Whedon did once he came aboard. But when people talk about the Snyder cut, they're not talking about something that any of us knows actually exists.
It's
What we
like trying
do
to say
know-
we're going to take the Duffer Brothers solo before Ron Howard came in and put that out. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I think some of that is true. I mean, there's some parallels there. I had to stop and think about
Yeah,
about it. Yeah, because that's something like that happens when you switch directors in the middle of a project, and so in this case, the Snyder cut, is based on a different version of the script, and in post-production, we don't even know how much of what was shot that was part of that original version of the script that he was working under actually even had any post-production done on it. Sound, especially CGI, other special effects, all of that. All that may actually exist of that stuff is raw footage, which would never be commercially feasible to put out without spending a lot more money to get it ready to put out commercially. And let's face it, this movie did not make enough money, even in its completed version, to justify going back and doing that. So most of this is just wishful thinking and people looking retrospectively at what Zack Snyder was trying to do, and looking at the fact that what Joss Whedon did ended up not working, and saying, well, it could have been better if only for blah blah blah. And the reality is we don't know the answer to that, because
It's basically like the Rocky Horror Cult saying, add the last music number, add the last
Is
music
it possible that this is an attempt by the WB to repair relations, to use Zack Snyder again in the future of his saved face,
no,
and say, hey, he did make
If
something
anything,
cool?
No.
If anything, it's probably just rogue marketing for HBO Max.
Ooh, which was a topic we'll get to, but yeah, that's
yeah,
possible.
I mean, I could see some of that, but remember who's doing it here. It's the actors,
The actors, right?
They're not, you don't pay actors to do that kind of thing.
You can tell that they don't know.
Especially if you don't have something to deliver, which they don't, which Warner's doesn't, rather. So
yeah, they're not going to go back and shoot anything.
So a lot of this is just, it's wishful thinking. It's people wanting to,
Basically, it's these actors saying, I did all of this shooting footage and it got cut out of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. I think
not-
that's much more likely the explanation, son.
Susanna said, this follows up with what you two just said. It's funny as hell. She said, I had to Google this. A Snyder cut means a film that was never finished. Basically true in this case.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. So
well, with that,
never
it'd be
been,
Superman, his director's cut. That's totally different. I mean,
I've never been convinced that Zack Snyder's vision of the Justice League was going to be workable anyway. I mean, just because Joss Whedon's version didn't do great doesn't mean that automatically Zack Snyder's or whatever. He went so dark in Superman.
Batman v Superman killed it for me. I didn't have any faith in Justice League. That's why I'm glad Joss Whedon took over. I'm sure that's why I kind of liked it. But
yeah, I mean, same here. I mean, there's a lot, once you get past the anti-hype about it, there's stuff to like about Justice League.
I like Justice League, but I think it's only because Joss rescued the main gist of it.
I don't know exactly, how much of Zack Snyder's stuff is still there and exactly how much of it is Joss Whedon.
Yeah.
So,
You can tell what Josh Whedon's stuff is. It's pretty brazenly clear.
Oh, especially when he focuses on Wonder Woman, because he absolutely loves all the heroes that are female, and especially Wonder Woman because he almost made that movie. He wrote it and nobody liked the script, but
it's because the director has certain proclivities of his own.
By the way, has anybody, any of you read the proposed Joss Whedon script for Wonder Woman that he pitched? That they said no. It's really amusing to read. If it had gotten made, it would have been a travesty. It was the worst thing I've ever. I was just like, wow, thank Christ they did not make this movie. But yeah, it was bad. So the Snyder Cut seems to be like a urban legend or of some sort in the movie world.
It's a meme.
It's a meme.
I
it's a
think
troll.
that's more of a meme. I wouldn't say it's a troll.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there are people who sincerely want to see the Snyder Cut. It just doesn't exist.
It could even be a way to remarket the Justice League as
It's called Injustice.
Yeah, yeah. I'm always very skeptical of the whole. Oh, they're doing it on purpose as a marketing thing. They're not that smart. Number one, and number two, it's dumb.
Could be an inside
to
joke.
take something that failed and make it even more of a failure is not smart marketing.
It could be just an inside joke. They're all texting each other.
By YouTubers who need clicks.
Yeah.
It's not smart to try and sell a flop.
I think it could be just them on an inside joke texting each other saying.
Just ask Elizabeth Banks.
This isn't poopery or the squatty potty. You can't have viral marketing over a flop.
Carlos, tell us about your excitement about the Expanse trailer.
Oh, I thought we were going to talk about Doctor Who first, but I'm happy to start with.
Well, Doctor Who is right behind it, but we'll start with the Expanse.
Sure. Yeah. No. So the new trailer came out this week for the Expanse season 4. It's a long one, so if you're here, it doesn't give away too much, but it's whetting. It does a lot to whet your appetite. If you're an Expanse fan, in fact, it goes. If you saw the first season, especially the first half of the first season, which it was a little slow getting off the tarmac there. It got better towards the end of the first season, and then it had a great second season and a fantastic third season. Now it's going into its fourth season, and after getting canceled initially by Sci-Fi and then saved by Amazon, and Amazon loves The Expanse. They've already greenlit a season 5, even though season 4 hasn't even aired yet. And I think they've actually even started working on filming season 5. So it's they're going, full bore on this. So basically what they've found is, the solar system is in this period of huge political turmoil and revolution, and Earth and Mars are at the point of war, and then you've got the people out in the asteroid belt who have essentially become their own kind of species and their own kind of political body, and they're revolutionary because Earth and Mars take advantage of them. And through all of those political tensions, they discover this portal that takes them into a whole other part of the universe, and everyone's fighting to control that portal. And that's kind of where we left off at the last of season 3. And now we actually start to see what's going on the other side of that portal. And our heroes from the first 3 seasons are kind of at the forefront of that, trying to keep all the political tensions and competition amongst the different planetary governments from overwhelming what's going on.
I've only seen a couple episodes of the first season. It's on my list though.
I'm sorry that I'm laughing, but this really does sound like a precursor to EVE Online.
To what?
EVE Online has a similar.
EVE Online has
yeah.
Basically, the backstory for EVE Online is that humanity found this wormhole to an entirely other galaxy. And they fought over control of this wormhole because Earth at that time had become these massive mega corporations. Mm-hmm. They were still sending expedition and colony ships through the wormhole. And in the midst of all of this conflict, the wormhole collapses and basically destroys the humanity that had been created on the other side of the wormhole. And it took thousands of years for those civilizations to rebuild.
Well, there's a lot of sci-fi stories that are going to be similar. Kind of like an Austin, anyways. No, I'm just kidding. So, yeah, and the other thing, trailer-wise, is dropping, I believe it's tomorrow, right? The Doctor Who trailer?
7 a.m. Pacific time. So 10 a.m. for you guys on the East Coast. Oh. And I think it's 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
Is it being dropped as part of a game or something, or is it going to be just put online?
No, it's the 56th
from now.
It's the 56th anniversary of the show.
Nice.
So that's why they chose that day, Saturday, to drop it.
I'm excited for Doctor Who to come back. I know. Just a reminder for everybody: when Doctor Who does come out, from what I've read, it's the same as last year. They're going to have a New Year's special. Then a couple months later, the regular series will come out. And when it does, we're going to be doing a Doctor Who after show for that, but like we've done in the past. But so I'm excited for it. And Jodie Whittaker's off to a good start, even though there's a lot of people pissed off. More people love her than hate her, so I'm one of them. I even tried to get her to marry me. You were there.
We were there.
I know.
I'm just waiting for there to be a coherent storyline at this point.
Well,
so broken apart the first season.
Yeah. Well, from what I've heard, there is. I want one of those, George.
Yeah.
You can get me that for Christmas.
Oh, it has another setting. I'm just kidding.
One of the critical, I think, mistakes they made in this last season was their declaration that there would be no multi-part episodes.
And doing it anyway.
That and bringing the old people, like old aliens and creatures back.
I don't mind that at all. In fact, they're promising a lot less of that.
They promised
I heard the upside.
every season.
I heard we're getting Cyber. At least
promise.
I heard we're getting Cybermen.
No Daleks.
No, but we have Jejun in the New Year's
Look,
special.
Justin's got a Matt Smith one.
I've got a Matt Smith one right over here.
They've showed in the pictures for a long time ago for the Jejun returning for the New Year's special.
Yeah,
and I heard the Cybermen are back for the episode. There was some behind the scenes that they haven't verified, but Cybermen and Jejun. But other than that, it could be all.
Yeah,
original.
you're not going to see any River Song. You're not going to see any. What else was it?
Probably not. But then again, they're very hush
That's the Sonic I want to own.
I know she gets a new outfit.
Rivers Red Sonic.
Yeah, the only thing I know is that she gets a new outfit. It's like a black kind of, not Victorian, but like a black dress with boots.
As long as they get away from that Robin Williams Mork for Mork.
I don't know if it's permanent, though, or just for one episode. The reason I'm thinking it's permanent is because even when she went to the witch trial Salem era, she didn't give a crap what she was wearing. So why would it, just be to blend in? You know what I mean? So she doesn't care about that.
Yeah,
so I'm thinking it's a permanent change because a lot of the doctors have slightly changed their outfits.
Well, I mean, it's basically this. I mean, like you said, Carlos, it's really this weird Mork from Mork and Mindy kind of look, but it's also this clash of your Peter Davidson,
Colin Baker,
some Colin Baker thrown in there.
Well, they're trying to make her weird. They always try to do that.
But at the same time, I mean, that is kind of the premise of the show.
It is. They always try to make the costume eccentric, but sometimes they go too far. When I saw a picture of behind the scenes,
at least she's not wearing a celery stalk. Admit that.
Yeah. Well, actually, in one episode that he explained, it was to absorb some poison toxins. But anyways, she the outfit I saw was she was wearing a black trench coat, a black skirt, black top, and different kind of long black boots. It looked pretty good on her. I'm hoping that's not a temporary costume, just to have something different that she wears. But we'll see. That's just, little pet peeves, but who cares? She's a great actress.
Real quick. Dr. Grimm says that it's the writing of Jodie and not the actress herself.
I will
that
agree.
A lot of people have issue with.
To a degree, I think, because the characters, the cast, the companions, and her are fantastic. But some of the writing in some of the episodes was a little uneven.
He also asserts in all caps that Tom Baker is the best.
Tom Baker was my first Doctor. So
disagree. But
yeah, but you didn't watch classic.
I like Tom Baker.
More of a Matt Smith. That's the one
I'm more
started
of a Matt
on.
Smith too.
I started on Matt Smith.
I'll be honest. I'm a Colin Baker lover. So
well, there's plenty of doctors for all of us.
Doctors
we know who George's favorite is.
Yeah.
I mean,
I do want to go back to what Carlos was saying.
Is that restraining order still
the only
active?
problem with marrying a Time Lord, though, or Time Lady, either way, is that if they regenerate, well, technically they die, so your marriage is null and void because till death do us apart. So if they regenerate, they died. So
not according to River Song.
Anyways,
yeah,
I thought that restraining order was still active.
So Carlos,
Son, you were going to say something.
You said the worst thing that they could have done was to upfront tell us that this season was not going to be connected. And yes, I really think that was a terrible thing, not only because they actually did do it eventually in the season anyway.
Oh, you mean as far as an arc, an overarching thread?
Right. I mean, they're talking about like 2-part episodes.
Oh, okay.
But this is also something that kind of backfired on them because we've seen it from oh good God, what's his name?
Chris Chibnall?
Hate him so much I've forgotten his name.
Steve Moffat?
Last showrunner. There you go. Moffat. Moffat makes these one-off episodes that seem like they have nothing to do with what's going on. And all of a sudden, there's that thing.
Yeah,
well, Chris Chibnall's whole point was he was trying this whole. If you look at the intro too, his whole thing was to go back to the way classic Who was made, including the music and the theme. And his idea was in the classic Who, you didn't have an
classic food.
There was no arc in any classic. It was all individual one-off
I think
stories.
that's a mistake.
That was what he was attempting.
It's him trying to recreate his childhood, and anyone who really looks at what they liked as a child, like really looks at that, realizes that it's because they were children.
Susanna asked what this was. Susanna, this is Jodie Whittaker's sonic screwdriver. So each doctor had their own sonic.
George, I want one.
Oh, and she says Justin's doing a super job with the backgrounds and he's impressed.
Yes, thank you.
Good job, Justin. All right. So those Doctor Who tomorrow. We'll talk about that next show about what we thought of the trailer. Lord of the Rings is already ordered season 2 ahead of season 1 being released. It doesn't shock me at all. They must. I've heard nothing.
There's a Lord of the Rings series.
Oh yeah, it's been
yes,
about for quite a while
on Amazon.
Yeah.
You think that after
like that
huge saga of series of sagas that they made around the turn of the century, that the definitive Lord of the Rings has been done, but apparently not so much.
This one takes place thousands of years before the movies, and
they still do have the Silmarillion to cover. So
that's the era that they're covering in this series.
Okay. So that boring ass book is what they're making a series out of.
It's not. It wasn't. It was a compilation of things. It wasn't a story. That's why people don't. Some people don't like it.
Literally reads like the first few chapters.
It was described as they took all the notes he had laying around on his
It's
bed
nothing but this history.
All right.
Anyways, but yeah, so they ordered season 2, but it's a big budget show. So Carlos, does this give you some some excitement that season 1's probably pretty awesome? Or
that's not exactly what's going on. I mean, it probably is awesome if they're going ahead and greenlighting a season 2, but the way they're doing it isn't just because the whole of season 1 was great, and so they're going ahead and doing an early renewal for season 2. What they're actually doing was they're planning on doing 2 seasons for sure anyway, and they're creating a hiatus, a 4 to 5 month hiatus after the first 2 episodes of season 1, so that what they can do during that time is ramp up for the stuff they're going to be doing in season 2, and they'll actually be shooting some of season 2 at the same time that they're shooting the last part of season 1. Peter Jackson did this himself in making the films. It's a way of saving money because you're just basically keeping production going rather than ramping up a fresh movie, because you spend a lot of money ramping up.
Right.
And this way they're only ramping up once, and they just keep producing in the future, but they're giving them a break in the middle to be able to manage that. So that's what we're seeing here. It's still a very strong vote of confidence on the part of Amazon Studios for this series. I mean, it has every indication that it could be a pretty good series. So I'm certainly.
They haven't really made anything bad yet, so that I could think of recently. So yeah. Anybody else have a thought about that Lord of the Rings thing before I move on? It was just worth mentioning, but it's not really, not much substance.
Too little to go on.
All right. HBO Max wants to be the next big package, and there's an interesting, Carlos, I'll let you lead on this, but there's an interesting thing that we decided to do, kind of juxtapose with what's going on with the DC Universe and what they're doing and where they're placing their shows as they close down that streaming service. It's very interesting. Carlos, why don't you start with that?
Sure. Okay, so we've been hearing for quite a while now that Warner Brothers, which owns HBO, which has a lot of their own intellectual property, which includes DC Comics and part of the CW network as well, that they've come up with this new network called HBO Max, and that it is their entry into the ongoing streaming wars that we're seeing going on now, where once dominated by Netflix and still technically dominated by Netflix, but now we have a lot of other competitors going up with Disney Plus, with Disney's purchase of Hulu, with Amazon, and now with Warner Brothers and their HBO Max.
Oh, I understand the heavy breathing.
You'll have to explain it to me.
Well, the thing is, okay, so the DC part of it is DC Universe.
Give me a second first.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were...
because there's a bigger context. Before
I'm sorry, I didn't know you
before
were.
We start,
okay.
That's okay. Before we start drilling down on some of the specific kinds of properties, because the head guy of Warner Media was recently saying at one of the an industry function a couple of weeks ago, was saying that, in the face of the streaming wars, where you have, NBC Universal's coming up with their own streaming platform, and of course now we've got Disney and there's CBS and all these others, that that HBO, HBO Max, which everyone has been saying is just yet another entry into these streaming wars. He's saying they're trying to do something very different. That actually what they're not trying to do is balkanize the online streaming market by, putting up just their own stuff and having it compete with other people's stuff. Because of course the problem is that at some point people are going to be complaining about this the way they were complaining about cable, that we're paying a lot of money, but I only watch, a subset of those channels.
Right.
And I only want to pay for what I want to watch. And guess what, folks, you got your wish. But the problem is that all the stuff you want to watch is now on different streaming platforms. So if you want to see everything you want to watch, you have to buy all the streaming platforms. Yep. And guess what it ends up costing? About as much as you were paying for cable. So what the guy at HBO is saying is that they're actually trying to aggregate as much different intellectual property and series and franchises as they can between HBO and Warner Brothers, and that's what HBO Max is.
Sure. You
that's
can
one
say that, but I mean, you literally could have left all your shit on Netflix if that's how you felt.
No, because you still want to make money. You're forgetting that very important part here.
The licensing is a big deal.
That's the big part of the bottom line of it, is that we're making all of these promises, or that we're trying to do all of this stuff that, I mean, if you really felt that way, you would have just left it on Netflix.
No, sometimes licensing.
I don't agree with that at all.
Sometimes licensing is the way to save your company, not just saying everybody come to us, or, if you want this material. So if they like the material, but not enough to completely, because they don't like everything else, like Carlos was saying, then you have specific things. The smart thing, license out your content, and then that way people can bundle it, and it's a win-win. I mean, well,
no, not necessarily, George. Which is the reason why it's the reason why you're seeing so many different streaming platforms now, is because people are realizing that they actually, the thing that's great about licensing, of course, is that it's a steady and dependable, reliable source of ongoing revenue for legacy content that otherwise would just be, gathering mold in your vaults.
Right.
And now they've realized
services, they can literally make money on the front end with it.
Exactly, for themselves, not for Netflix, because the way licensing works is you pay a licensing fee up front if you're Netflix, and you pay a studio for each of the shows that you want to put on your platform. And the thing is, once that happens, you can make as much money as you want from it. And that's what Netflix proved, that if you aggregate enough of this different legacy content together, there's a whole lot more money to be made. And so that's why Disney especially figured this out early, that that licensing was actually not a good way to make money, that they actually had the potential to make
true. Disney,
a lot more money from their intellectual property than by just licensing out.
How's that tied to HBO Max?
Well, because HBO is trying to aggregate as much content as it can, which is why you're seeing the DC Universe stuff coming back into the fold, and why HBO Max is not just Warner Brothers content, it's also all the pre-existing content that HBO owns as well.
It's everything that AT&T owns.
Well, here's what's
not just HBO, not just Warner Brothers.
Correct.
But here's what's interesting about the twist on the DC part, not just the idea of what you're talking about. DC was, nobody knew exactly how they were going to handle closing down the DC streaming servers, and
I don't see them closing down the DC.
No, listen, they are.
They're going to.
They just announced season 3 of Titans for DC.
Yes, but hear me out. Titans has not been announced as to where they're going. They've been announcing that Stargirl, for example, which is the picture Justin showed, is going to debut on DC Universe. After the first episode, it goes over to the CW. Interesting. Doom Patrol, is going next season to HBO Max. They haven't announced what's going on with Titans, but the guess is that they are going to season 3 will be over on HBO Max because DC streaming is slowly shutting its doors.
Last I heard, Titan season 3 is going to DCU.
It's not about the show; it's about the platform, Ross.
And the Harley Quinn animated series is debuting is on DCU.
But they're going to swap over to a different network, like they're doing with they're migrating all the shows slowly.
All of that intellectual
closing.
properties owned by Warner Brothers.
Right.
So they're saying, why run 2 separate streaming platforms when we can put it all on one?
Right.
Does that mean HBO Plus is also going away?
Well, no, it's a different.
There is no HBO
thing.
Plus.
You mean the regular
HBO's
Go.
standalone?
HBO Now is going away.
HBO Now, thank you.
Yes, it's being merged into HBO Max.
Oh, right, yeah. And also, the other thing, too, is that the Green Lantern TV series is going to start straight over on HBO, but it is connected to the whole Berlanti versus, it might be in the Titans universe, but it's starting on HBO Max. That's going to be for that one.
Oh, God, they're restarting that again.
I have a question.
Don't go by the movie.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I've not been here in a couple of weeks, so I've not kept up as well as I should. Have you guys talked about Stargate Command shutting down?
Nope. I don't even know about that.
I'm not a Stargate.
Stargate Command was MGM's solely Stargate dedicated streaming service, where they were supposed where they were supposed to have original content and all this kind of stuff. Well, MGM is closing it down because it too is bleeding money.
Right.
Because
that's the problem with single streaming platforms is they are expensive. Because even at like $4 or $6 a month, people expect content, and this is one of the challenges that CBS All Access has.
But here's the problem with that Stargate streaming. You can find the Stargate shows and movies everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. When you don't completely control your own intellectual property because you've licensed it out to a lot of different places, it's really hard to make an economic justification for something like a standalone streaming service, like the Stargate one. So that's exactly why you're seeing Warner Brothers doing what they're doing in trying to bring together all of these different franchises now under the HBO Max umbrella, rather than operating.
Which I think is smart.
Two or more separate streaming platforms.
So wait, does this mean that the new Game of Thrones shows will be on HBO Max also?
Yes. Well, the old ones will be.
I mean the new one that's coming, the prequels.
Yes, it's very smart, Justin, which makes me question why Disney wants to keep like 3 and 4 different streaming services.
It might not.
Oh, no, there's a really good reason for that, son. It has to do with target marketing. There's adult stuff that you're not going to put on Disney Plus. You need
that would be perfect for Hulu.
Yeah, exactly. Because they almost did that Ghost.
The Mandalorian is on Disney Plus, is it not?
Yeah, but that's not.
It's not
that's
really
PG.
adult.
It's not. It's Star Wars level Star Wars.
You don't think stormtroopers on pikes, their heads on pikes?
They weren't their heads. They were the helmets. I don't know why people thought they were heads just because the pikes were through. Those were helmets.
Yeah.
Anyways,
they were helmets. There's the thing is Disney Plus is not a kids only thing, and I'm not trying to intimate that it is. What I am saying though is that there's some material, intellectual property that Disney now owns that isn't appropriate for a streaming platform that's aimed at families.
Yeah, they were going to do it for Hulu for a lot of it, but that's suddenly not seems.
It's like okay.
But see, here's the other thing. Then why there was when Disney Plus did their freeform takeover, one of those commercials was for The Simpsons being on Disney Plus.
Which is on Disney Plus.
Well, they're more family friendly.
As raunchy as The Simpsons might be, it is still a family show.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
And The Mandalorian is not inappropriate for kids. It's the same violence level as any Star Wars thing. So.
And Simpsons are not as bad as, say, Family Guy.
Simpsons is still a primetime TV show.
It was on at like 7, 8 o'clock, and families were expected to watch it. It was raunchy, but it wasn't that raunchy.
And Family Guy was canceled 2 times.
That's Second Fireland. That's different. Let's go to what are we watching? We had a lot of topics, but
before you do, the reason I brought up Stargate Command is because MGM is closing down Stargate Command. And they've not said a word about where where you're going to be able to get classic Stargate stuff.
You might not be able to unless somebody buys the.
MGM isn't the only one that shut down. The Geek and Sundry and Nerdist's channel Project Alpha has been shut down as well.
Babylon 5 went through a period where nobody could watch it for a while until somebody got the licensing to do it. So sometimes there's a gap where you have to wait.
Yeah, eventually it'll be licensed,
right?
Because they don't. MGM doesn't have enough stuff to do its own streaming platform, and if they try, it'll fail.
Some shows
the fatalities of the streaming war are out there.
Yeah, and there's going to be gaps of availability for some series when these things happen. You're just going to be patient. Somebody will pick it up eventually and say, "Hey,
all the Stargate stuff is on Amazon Prime Video."
Good to know.
Yeah, that's true. Amazon actually and iTunes are home for a lot of legacy stuff if you're interested in specific franchises and series and things.
Doctor Who too?
Yep, Doctor Who.
Now, Doctor Who, I heard with the BBC had been trying to prepare to do their own streaming for Doctor Who. I don't think it's this season, maybe the next one, but that's their plan. They're working towards it.
Don't think that they the smart thing would not be to make just a Doctor Who streaming.
No, not just Doctor Who. It's
not
a BBC thing, but
it's a BBC thing.
But they never said that. I mean, they could still announce it, but it seemed they talked about it. I don't think this series is going to start that trend. But we'll see. I don't know. But I don't know if BBC America will count or whatever. We'll find out. So far, they haven't said it's going to be any different recently, so we'll find out.
From what I recall about the BBC America thing is that even if the BBC does launch its own streaming platform, Doctor Who will still appear on BBC America. It'll just be a day late.
Oh, all right. Hey, that's not bad. All right, let's go to what are we watching? I'll start real quick because I want to. I watched recently the classic movie Logan's Run on Netflix, and I forgot how much I love that movie. And there was an article I read that the guy that created Logan's Run was in the middle of writing a screenplay for a sequel because he had 3 books, and the only thing that's been made into a movie and a television series is based off the first book all these years. Well, he was writing a screenplay for them to do the second, third, and carrying on as a movie series when he died in 2015, and they've been debating what to do with his unfinished screenplay. It's possible that they're going to be doing something with that, I read. So we'll see. But I like the concept of Logan's Run, dystopian future, and the whole ageism thing, and the way the AI does its thing.
Okay, Boomer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to have to agree with Ross on this one. Okay, Boomer, because I was alive around the first time that Logan's Run.
Well, yeah,
it was okay. It was the 70s, dude. And they made a sequel which was awful. We have no idea about the commercial viability.
They didn't make a sequel. They made a TV series.
Oh, that's right. It was a TV. It was still awful.
I know. It did continue from the story of the movie, though. But you're right. So it was kind of a sequel.
Yeah. So there's nothing that says to me this is going to be a successful franchise. It just wasn't it was a gimmicky kind of
I read the books
that was
where it could go is pretty interesting.
One movie, but is it a sustainable premise? I'm not convinced.
Well, they get into parallel worlds and living out, not just living outside the domes. They get into parallel universe stuff in the second and third book of the original author, but who knows?
Well, the thing is that it would have to be like Battlestar Galactica. That if you're going to reboot something like that, it really has to be a reimagination. It has to be taking, and it's possible because and Battlestar Galactica pulled it off, but they did it by really reimagining it, and going beyond the premise of the original.
The only difference though is Battlestar Galactica wasn't based off a very visionary book at the time. This was, and because they had tried to make this Logan's Run movie since the late 60s, and then finally it got made in the late 70s. And the basic themes that are in this science fiction story could work if repurposed today.
Here's the problem with that, George. You have to remember what things were like. Well, I was around in the 60s and 70s, so I can tell you what things were like then.
I was too.
The age of 30 was considered old. It is no longer considered.
That's why ageism was brought up.
30-year-olds today are still considered kids. So, so that means you have to throw it even older. And once you start going even older than that, then people just don't.
Yeah, because it was funny because the actors It was like Beverly Hills 90210 or something. It was like the actors were obviously in their late 20s or 30s, and they're supposed to be the longest they lived is like 25. I
think 30. I think 30 was.
No, it was like 25. That's when you get the glowing thing on their hand.
Either way, the point is that something that worked in the 60s and 70s with the way that people looked at age no longer works today, and so that means you have to come up with a really different take on it, not just replicate and update. You have to really reimagine it on the same level that Ron Moore did with Battlestar Galactica, and frankly, that's really hard to do.
It is.
So, until I hear who's actually behind this creatively, I'm going to basically say it's a bad idea.
Well, mostly I'm just talking about how I just rewatched it and remembered that I enjoyed it because back then it was a huge success movie. But even though it's an older movie, I mean, I gotta say I was like, wow, I forgot I actually liked this movie. But so that's what I've been watching. What about you, Carlos?
What have I been watching? Not that much genre stuff this week. Pardon?
I've been watching news feeds all week.
I have been watching news feeds.
Well, that's what he does.
I've been doing a lot of work, so I'm kind of behind on stuff. And the TV I've been watching, not much of it has been science fiction related. So I've watched This Is Us. I'm behind on Castle Rock, which I've been really enjoying.
Right.
I don't know if the rest of you, and of course Mandalorian, but we're talking about that on Sunday. Reminder to everybody that
Sunday is going to be a little. I'll mention that at the end of the show. Oh, by the way, real quick before I forget and move on to somebody else, I tried getting back into Riverdale with my girlfriend because we were like 5 episodes behind after the Luke Perry death funeral thing. So I don't know if you have, but we started trying to get back to it. The Halloween. By the time we get to the Halloween episode, this show, and I keep hearing this from other people now, this show is going off the rails to the point where I'm like, I don't think it's going to make it through to another season. It has jumped the shark. It has completely become a clusterfuck. I'm just like,
well,
I mean, they got Cheryl Blossoms bringing up her dead brother's not even fully decomposed to hang out, and then I'm just like, this is getting
That's
stupid.
The problem with series like that is that,
they
outlive their premise. You know, the premise only can take you so far, and then you realize, oh, we don't have anything left, so that means we have to get wacky if we want to keep people watching and just make sure that Archie has his shirt off enough every episode.
So wait a minute. Okay, did they literally hang out a corpse to dry?
Yeah, her brother, twin brother.
So Riverdale did shit that Sabrina the Teenage Witch should have been doing.
Yeah,
they'll be doing. I mean, they're going to cross over at some point.
Yeah, and then ghosts and dolls, and the Halloween episode was kind of. But and then a couple episodes later, they're rehashing. They're running out of ideas. They're rehashing and bringing up stuff they've done in the past seasons that worked and trying to rehash it. And it's just horrible. It's like now I keep in mind, unlike Arrow, for most of its run, had several seasons.
Flash.
3 or 4 seasons of Arrow were so bad people just stopped watching except for the crossovers. It's in its final season, and this I'm enjoying Arrow better than anything, better than the Flash, any of the others. They're doing him proper for the final, bringing in his adult daughter. That's supposed to be a spinoff, with getting ready for Crisis.
Well, and look at the reason for that, though. They're not doing the formula anymore. That's the problem with these CW shows, most of which I love, at least starting out. Is they fall into this rut season after season after season, and we've talked about
the writers,
this before.
Who they hire,
and and you're seeing this kind of creative reblossoming back on Arrow, literally because it is coming to an end.
They're focusing.
They can't afford to do the formula anymore, and so they're actually having to be creative, and you're seeing that pay off.
I couldn't believe it. I'm actually enjoying Arrows and actually following and looking forward to each episode. I'm like, are you serious? And they're talking about one of the spin-offs is going to be his daughter Mia in the future Star City 2040. And she time travels. She's with him now. It's kind of like the Barry North thing, but done better. And he is preparing because, for her point of view, he died. Or he's going to die in Crisis, supposedly. And we've seen in the
spoilers,
season before,
George.
Yeah,
George.
Well, we don't know if it's going to happen.
They teased that in Elseworlds.
All right. Spoilers. Anyways, I'm just saying, Arrow's final season as they're getting towards Crisis and Batwoman, their CW is getting back to being great again. Went off 1 or 2 shows, sometimes go, but it's getting great. And then the Superman show is coming out. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to what they're going to do. Crisis is almost here. Ross, what have you been watching?
I haven't been able to watch much. I've rewatched some of The Flash with my fiance. We're in this season with Zenadar, the god of speed, I think. A bit of YouTube. I've been playing. I just completed a game called The Outer Worlds.
Yeah, I keep hearing good things about that.
A new RPG by Obsidian Studios that made Knights of the Old Republic 2 and Fallout New Vegas. If you haven't played it, I highly suggest it. If you have Game Pass, you have it without having to pay for it.
Yeah, and a lot of people love it.
Of course, Death Stranding.
Which you reviewed.
Yes. So a lot of fun stuff. The latest expansion of BattleTech is out. I'm about to start a community interactive campaign with that. So if you want to help me name pilots, nickname mechs, or help out, or just to guide the story of the Cold Steel Legion, my mercenary company. If you want to get in on it, just hang on on my Twitch channel.
You should make a DJ Harumph character. That would be cool. Keep posting the links when you're doing the live shows.
Make a Carlos character and make all of the weapons on his mech missile launchers.
Hey, the archer.
No, I want one of them
then.
Mandalorian fire flamethrowers. Those are awesome.
Yeah.
Well, then the fire starter is probably the one for you.
Okay.
But subscribers get first dibs on everything. So if you really want to get in on it, please subscribe.
All right, Justin, what have you been watching?
Well, I have been watching the new DuckTales, believe it or not.
That's
cool.
so sweet.
I got bored. I wanted to see it. That was a show I grew up on.
Hey, I'm not casting stones, Justin. I've been watching High School Musical, the series.
I'm going to watch that now.
Hey, do they still have David Tennant? Is David Tennant still playing Scrooge for DuckTales?
I don't know if he is or not. I don't sound like it.
I think he is.
I love that you have the DuckTales thing graphic ready to go there, Justin.
Well, David Tennant was playing Scrooge recently.
Still is, yes.
Oh wait, I think that is the season where David Tennant was him. Yeah.
Did you see the video they did for the trailer for that with him and all the cast in it?
No.
You didn't
I'll have to
see
check
it?
out. No.
It's on YouTube.
Okay. You can also see the trailers on Disney Plus too.
How are you liking it, Justin?
What?
How are you liking it?
It's actually pretty good. Surprisingly well for a reboot. The story flow's pretty good. The only difference with this one is, I guess, like the Duckworth character is not in this. He's dead, apparently. Spoiler, but minor.
Damn, Disney.
Right. But he's back as a ghost. But, so, there you go.
Cool. What about you, son? What have you been watching? I know you're trying to catch up with shit because you got the internet.
It's not so much what I've been watching as what I've been playing to pass the time. And,
what's this? Games you could do offline. You were doing?
Yeah. Well, amazingly, I still had this 2004 game. I don't know if Ross has ever heard of it. It's called Blood Rain 2.
Yeah.
Oh yeah!
Oh my God.
I used to love that game. I'm
sorry.
I used to Blood Rain. Number 2 wasn't that good.
No, for being the only Blood Rain game I've ever played, I'm actually pretty impressed with it.
Okay.
And I would absolutely and having so here's the deal. This was originally packaged with the Blood Rain movie DVD.
Oh.
The Yule Boy one or the other one?
Wait a minute. No. Back up. Stop. Before you guys puke and all that kind of stuff. Yes, the movie is horrible, but this game was packaged with the DVD for the movie.
Actually, I like the third one with the Nazi time period.
Compared to the movie, this game is actually pretty decent. And
one of the movies with the Nazis was not bad.
If the first game was vampire versus Nazis.
Yeah. But in the movies
Let's unfinish.
All right, good.
Basically, with what we've seen recently with a lot of game studios is we want to remaster classics, like they're remastering the Command & Conquer game and the Red Alert game, the first games. And I feel if any game deserved like a good remaster and overhaul of the mechanics, it would definitely be Blood Rain 2, because its story is solid It's just the mechanics are so wonky.
I had to laugh. You reminded me of
They
something.
could get
Son.
Laura Bailey back as Blood Rain.
Son, real quick, Son reminded me of something. I was watching the movie with Kerry Russell called Dark Skies, the UFO abduction thing with their family. And there's a scene where the father's trying to get one of his sons to come home, and the mother's on the phone with him going, he says he has to be a little late because he's got an epic game of Call of Duty going on. And he goes, that's what save buttons are for, buddy. And I'm thinking, save buttons? That's like either the dad's stupid or the writers of the movie. I'm thinking the dad was just stupid. But anyways, yeah, saving that game. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. So, all right. Well, just remind everybody, our Mandalorian after show is Sundays, and it is
no way, Justin.
Oh, the Fog
I'm
Watch.
jealous.
Open
Oh,
it.
I'm
Open it. Hold on. Open it. I want to see if you become I want to see if you become a Time Lord. Open it. Can you open it? You won't be able to open it if you're. See, you're not a Time Lord because you opened it.
Because he hasn't stored his soul in it yet, George. Damn.
Well, give him a chance.
Yeah.
By the way, we didn't talk about tonight, but I have been watching. We should talk about it next week, maybe. Watchmen.
Oh my God, that last episode.
And his Dark Materials, which both are.
Thank you for reminding me.
Sunday nights on HBO.
Yeah, but the Watchmen is getting so.
Oh, I forgot to mention Ruby.
Oh my God. Oh, I was watching an interview.
And Titans.
Yeah, Titans, and he becomes Nightwing next week. It showed the trailer's out. That's no, you know what I was about to say is kind of a spoiler for what the actress is when it comes to Dr. Manhattan coming.
Do it.
Don't do it, George.
No, you'll laugh.
Don't do it, George. That's one of the biggest complaints I hear about this show.
Do it.
All right.
Please, God.
All right, it's funny. I'll tell you after the show.
Come over there and all up on your ass.
It's funny, though. I won't do now. All right, so Sunday, but here's the thing. It's a little earlier. So it's going to be 9 Pacific time and 12 a.m. Eastern time instead of an hour later like we've been doing. For the Mandalorian after show, Sean will be there with his pants off, probably.
Probably.
All right, I want to thank everyone for joining us December 8th. Look at our Trello. Carlos's Trello is pinned on our group, and that Trello gives you links, article details of some of the stuff we talked about. If we didn't cover as much as we want to about a certain subject, there's details in the Trello, which is great. You can follow up on more details about a subject that sounded good to you that we didn't talk enough about. Because there is a lot of extra side information, like what Son was saying earlier, about stuff that's happened with any of these topics. But we only have so much time. So use the Trello for that. It's going to be like a news reporting thing that Carlos is handling on top of as an extra thing besides what we're doing here. So, all right, I want to thank everyone for joining us in the live chat. This has been another episode of Super Geeks. Peace out, everyone.
Peace out.
Live streams.